In June 1962, 59 students gathered at a lakeside conference center in Port Huron, Michigan. Most were college-aged. Almost all were white, middle-class, and politically aware. What they wrote over 5 intense days would become one of the most influential political manifestos in American history. It was called the Port Huron Statement, and it launched the Students for a Democratic Society, SDS, the voice of a restless new generation. You're listening to End of the Road in Michigan. The early 1960s were a time of rising contradictions. The post-war economy was booming, but poverty persisted. Civil rights were advancing, but segregation was still law in much of the South. America claimed to be a model of democracy, yet the Cold War had it backing dictators abroad and surveilling dissent at home. Into that landscape stepped a new kind of student movement, one that wanted more than slogans and sit-ins. They wanted a vision. The group that met in Port Huron in 1962 were mostly members of the fledgling Students for a Democratic Society. SDS had roots in the old socialist and labor movements, but wanted to shake off dusty ideology. They met at Fellowship Hall, a summer retreat owned by the United Auto Workers on the shores of Lake Huron. It was peaceful, removed from campus pressures, a good place to think and write. The main author was Tom Hayden, a University of Michigan graduate and editor of the Michigan Daily. He'd spent time in the South covering civil rights struggles and had seen firsthand the hypocrisy of American democracy. What emerged was a 75-page political manifesto, both analytical and idealistic. It began with a sentence that struck a nerve. "We are the people of this generation, bred in at least modest comfort, housed now in universities, looking uncomfortably to the world we inherit." It was a call to reimagine democracy, not as a system of institutions, but as something personal, participatory, and moral. The Port Huron Statement criticized the Cold War, questioned American exceptionalism, and laid out a philosophy called participatory democracy, the idea that individuals should have a direct say in the decisions affecting their lives. It also challenged the complacency of the American middle class and the structure of higher education. It argued that students were in a unique position to demand change because they were both insiders and outsiders to the system. The document didn't call for revolution, but it did question capitalism, militarism, and institutional racism. It laid the groundwork for student-led action on civil rights, poverty, nuclear disarmament, and free speech. It was radical in tone, but rooted in the American tradition, invoking the Declaration of Independence and democratic values. SDS grew quickly. From a few hundred members in 1962, the organization ballooned to over 100,000 by 1969. Chapters formed on campuses nationwide. Their actions evolved, from community organizing to major anti-war protests, and eventually to more confrontational tactics. By the end of the decade, SDS would fracture and fade, but the ideas from Port Huron never disappeared. Tom Hayden went on to become a legislator and activist for decades. Many others from that original group shaped education, policy, and the modern left. And though the Port Huron Statement was written over 60 years ago, parts of it still feel current. Its critiques of inequality, government overreach, and political apathy remain relevant. So does its core demand, a democracy that works for everyone, not just the powerful. It started at the edge of Lake Huron in a quiet union-owned lodge. A group of students dared to question the future and write their own terms for it. They called it the Port Huron Statement. And it changed the conversation. This has been End of the Road in Michigan. Thanks for listening.